Welcome to the Are We Idiots Show, where we question the status quo on society's important issues while mixing in plenty of laughs along the way. Now here are your hosts, Mark Weaver and Rich Kroll.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Are We Idiots Show. We are your host, as always mentioned, Richard Kroll and Mark Weaver.
Thanks for putting me first this week, because I'm feeling like I'm a little taller than you this week. But I got a quick question. What is that wailing noise instrument in the back of the opening music that sounds like a lamb being slaughtered?
It's a wah-wah or something. Remember Peter Frampton used to have a wah-wah?
Wah-wah.
Maybe wah-wah guitar. Actually, I don't know the answer to that, but maybe Eric Weaver from the Eric Weaver Experience can answer that at some point. Send us a tweet, Eric, what that wah-wah sound is in that.
Not to be confused with our multi-billion-dollar food market.
Or the multi-platinum selling EWE experience. Oh, maybe not. Maybe not multi-platinum.
It's getting there.
You know, I did bring up your complaint that they need more songs coming, so they're working on that. So just so you know.
I like the music. I'm starting to think these are famous songs. I've heard them so many times. I can't tell the difference between the Beatles, the Stones, and EWE.
It took, according to Eric, it took about 30 years to get the first album. So let's
it?
hope we don't wait 30 for the next one. All right, folks, welcome back, and we have a great show planned. By the way, any quick tips or words of wisdom? You do? Okay.
I do. Folks, when you're traveling on a plane, okay,
Which you did this week.
Which I did. One of the most frequented tasks is going to the bathroom. You know, if you have 200 people on a plane, I'd argue anywhere from a quarter to a half use one of the bathrooms during the flight, especially a long flight. But when you go into the bathroom, there's a lock that if you use it, turns the outside lights from green to red to know there's somebody in there.
Yeah.
Folks, remember to lock the door.
Or you might get barged in on.
I watched probably 1 out of 3 people not lock the door. You get barged in on, and if you're a woman sitting down, it can be pretty darn embarrassing. And if you're a guy standing up with his butt exposed, it can also be very embarrassing.
Who drops their whole drawers to go to the bathroom? Standing up? Guys do that? I've never seen it at a urinal. That would be really bad.
Some guys that are packing.
Really proud peacocks. The other thing is, Rich, when you're in there, don't lick the toilet seat. We learned that a few episodes ago.
I stopped doing that since you showed us that girl doing it a couple weeks ago.
And that ties into our closing segment today. Just a little tease that you're going to want to stick around for. But on the show, and before we get to our agenda today, I just want to remind our listeners that we're in a new phase, and we're soliciting patrons on Patreon and actually corporate sponsors and advertisers. This week, Mark Zlotnikoff made a generous donation, so we thank Mark for that. And
otherwise known as
Z-Man. And the prior week, we had highlighted new platinum and gold patrons, Eric Weaver, Chris Barbie, and Mary Ellen Weaver Real Estate.
Just a coincidence, 2 of them have the same last name as you.
That is true. And she asked me to mention that she also got her New Jersey license. So she can sell you a Shore House. So contact her for that.
Good to know.
And by the way, last little housekeeping issue. We are now on SoundCloud. So we have a feed on SoundCloud. So your favorite podcasting platforms are being supported by the Are We Idiots Show. So add SoundCloud to the list if you want to get your podcast.
Am I going to sound old or socially inept if I ask you what SoundCloud is?
Yes.
So I won't ask that.
Don't ask that.
I won't ask.
But it's the same. It's a podcasting platform.
I'm not asking. I don't need to know.
Okay, you don't need to know, but I just told you. All right, so we have our Idiots of the Week, and we're going to try to run through them pretty quickly because we actually have 3 listener nominees this week, one of which ties into our primary theme of victimhood today. And then we're going to talk about victimhood culture, which we teased last week. And then we're going to sum up the show, and I think I already teased this. We did this backed by popular demand. The imagining Mark and Rich totally drunk in the studio doing Idiots of the Week. It's backed by popular demand, and we'll laugh as we close the show. All right, Richie. Why don't you go first? I have a listener submitted nominee for Idiots of the Week. You have two. So why don't you go, I'll go, and then you close up.
This first Idiot of the Week nomination comes from our good friend George Muldoon, who was in the studio last episode with our Boston versus Philly, which is the better city episode. But we had so many, we didn't have time for all of them. But I thought this one deserved making the nomination list. So here we go. This is from George. Sometimes a Florida man makes it too easy for law enforcement. Polk County Sheriff's Office said that Ronnie Dylan Willis, 25, stole Marta Diaz's 2009 Jeep Patriot. While Diaz was being interviewed by a police officer outside her home regarding the stolen vehicle, Willis pulled up to the front of her house in her Jeep that was missing just hours earlier, got out of the driver's side, and asked her and the police officer if they'd seen his missing cell phone. Apparently, Willis lost his cell phone while stealing the Jeep and then traced it back to Diaz's home. Deputies say Diaz told them she had no idea who Willis was, but she had seen a strange man walking around the street near her house earlier that morning before she left with her husband to go to a local mall. So while Willis was there, volunteering himself,
He lost his cell phone. He was careless, a careless crook.
very careless. Officers decided to interview Willis, and Willis told them that he awoke at the residence inside a vehicle, but could not recall which vehicle. And then he said he knocked on the door of the house, and when no one answered, he left in the Jeep Patriot to go home to try to find his cell phone.
Of course, that makes perfect sense.
Now that he said that, it did make perfect sense to me.
All right, cancel him as a nominee.
So Willis pinged his cell after he was miles and hours away, and Diaz's home came up, and he goes, okay, good. Now I know where the phone is. So he went back to the area of the crime.
Did he get his cell phone?
That they didn't say. I don't think he did. The deputy, who probably could not believe the way this call was going, arrested Ronnie for grand theft auto and also learned that his license had been suspended in February, so he also received a traffic citation for driving with a suspended license. Willis was booked and released after posting the $1,000 bail.
Willis grooved a fastball to a slugger. I mean, the cops can't believe how easy that arrest was.
That's unbelievable.
I mean, was he whacked out on?
They didn't say he appeared intoxicated or drugged out.
Oh my
Just
goodness.
really stupid,
Oh
apparently.
my goodness! All right, so I have a good one for you, Richie. You're gonna enjoy this one. Again, submitted by Eric Weaver. He's very involved with our show. Two men dialed 911. Two men dialed 911 at 1:48 p.m. on Monday in Portland, Oregon, to report that someone had broken into a home in Cedar Hills neighborhood just outside Beaverton, which is right near Portland. The intruder was locked in the bathroom, the caller said, adding that he could see shadows moving under the door. A detective happened to be nearby and rushed to the scene. Within minutes, he was met there by 3 other deputies from the sheriff's office and 2 canine officers from the Beaverton police force. Evidently, there were 2 gentlemen house-sitting for their nephew, who was an adult, and they went outside to walk the dog, and when they come back, they hear something in the bathroom. The door is shut and locked, and they believe someone is in there, so they call police like anyone would. The officers on the scene didn't take any chances. They loudly announced their presence, warning the intruder that they'd been caught in the act, and then sent in one of the trained police dogs. That's when they surrounded the bathroom, ready for the worst. Whoever was inside was just ignoring police orders, and they were making a commotion as they presumably plotted an escape out the window. The police had their guns drawn and the dogs ready to go in. Quote, "We breached the bathroom door and encountered a very thorough vacuuming job being done by a Roomba robotic vacuum cleaner." The 2 men inside the house were hugely apologetic and embarrassed and had no idea that their nephew owned a Roomba.
Terminator is starting to happen. Robots are causing problems. That's crazy.
But you can imagine, like, the cops' minds are going. They're thinking it's a guy, like, commotion and not, just it's crazy.
Yeah, but think about, 6 officers, 2 K-9 units, guns drawn, hours of preparation, like a Navy SEAL, takeover, and it's a vacuum cleaner.
The only thing they were missing was the SWAT team, Mr. T.
Probably not a lot going on in that county of Oregon, I imagine.
All right, Richie, what's our final nominee?
All right, this one specifically and just coincidentally aligns with our show today on
Victimhood culture.
victimhood culture. This one is kind of funny, but it's really more aggravating. So I showed Mark a picture. I'm showing him now. I understand that's a radio faux pas when you show somebody something the audience can't see, but I'll describe it. So there is a trio of Easter chocolate ducks, right? We all are familiar with the famous chocolate ducklings.
Typically, it's a bunny, but we'll go
Well,
with
I
that.
guess UK does
Yeah.
ducklings.
They're always
we do bunnies.
They're backward.
They're both cute little furry animals. So the picture shows a white chocolate duckling, that yellowish white color.
Gotcha.
A milk chocolate, that traditional light brown chocolate look and duckling. And then there's a dark chocolate,
My favorite, by the way.
and better for you, by the way, higher cacao percentage.
God bless you.
This dark chocolate duckling has a spattering of, I guess, like
Red flecks.
like pink flecks, whatever it is, just to distinguish further. And they called these ducklings, so the white chocolate or vanilla duckling is fluffy, the milk chocolate duckling is crispy, and this dark chocolate with these kind of disgusting looking spatterings is called ugly. So, seems normal to me. It's actually kind of an ugly looking chocolate duckling. However, the UK grocery chain, Waitrose, has apologized after being accused of racism over the names of the chocolate ducklings. Apparently, this was generated by Twitter user Livia Aliberti, who questioned why the Waitrose chain chose to call the dark chocolate duckling ugly. I guess she didn't consider that it may have had something to do with Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tale of the ugly duckling, but also because it's kind of an ugly looking item, it didn't dawn on me that this could be racist because the dark chocolate was associated with African Americans, and then they're saying they're ugly.
They weren't African Americans if they're in Britain, but I got you.
Well, you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Well, the point is, a big to-do. This went.
Was she herself African American? Lots of times in these situations, they're not even African American themselves.
I don't think she is.
She's offended on their behalf.
She's offended on their behalf, and she made a big stink over Twitter, and then other people started chiming in. Yeah, that doesn't seem right.
I mean, it's chocolate. I mean, oh my goodness, this is outrageous.
And it is an ugly duckling. It never even crossed my mind that there was racist undertones behind it. So Waitrose, the grocery chain, has since apologized.
Oh my goodness.
And made a statement to CNN. We are very sorry for any upset caused by the name of this product. It was absolutely not our intention to cause any offense. We removed the product from sale several weeks ago, and we changed the labeling, and our ducklings are now back on sale. Aliberti thanked Waitrose for being so cognizant and aware of race sensitivity and changing the packaging.
Oh my
Are you
goodness.
kidding me? What is wrong with America, the world, the UK,
humans?
Europe? What is wrong with human beings?
They're outraged. They're outraged. We'll talk about it. It's the oppression Olympics. Who can outdo the other for being oppressed and victimized? It's outrageous.
By the way, why is the white chocolate duckling called fluffy not a problem? Fluffy, implies
it could be overweight.
Or weak.
That's body shaming. That's body shaming of a duck. I don't like it.
Or you're weak. And white people are then easily weak and offensive.
It's ridiculous. It's a chocolate duck for Easter. All right, Richie, you gotta nominate. You gotta make a decision here because I'm too ticked off to decide.
You're too ticked off. I mean, the vacuum is just a funny, stupid situation.
Right. Probably not idiotic enough.
It's hey, look,
The situation's idiotic, but the people weren't.
I'd rather have our police forces around the world err to being cautious in case it was.
Well, there I disagree with you. Then we have a police state, but we won't go down that road today.
The ducklings,
as tempted as I am,
is just, it's more egregious than it is idiotic. Anybody that goes back to the scene of a crime while the cops are still there and approaches the police,
a true definition of an idiot.
That is idiot personified. If I look up the word idiot in the dictionary, it's a good chance this guy's photo's there.
And he may need the dollar to buy a new cell phone.
Well, he'll need the dollar to help pay the $1,000 bail. So,
all right. Thank you, listeners, for taking the time to submit that. It's a big part of our show. We enjoy those each week. All right. So we're going to transfer into the victimhood culture discussion. And this actually, there's a book out there by the same name by some libertarian-esque folks, and you can go out and get it on Amazon if you wish. But the reason I think this is a good show to talk about is because it's kind of a amalgamation. You like
what?
That? You like that word? Amalgamation of
another word you can't spell.
I probably could figure it out if I had to, but you don't have to spell anymore. We've been through that. Of the helicopter parent show, the social media show, but more so the group identity show. I think it's closer to that, but it's kind of like I said, a combination of all those things coming together. And by the way, let me just preface, because I don't want I have a potential to get in trouble on this show by some of the things I may say, but I'm not saying that there aren't true victims in the world. There are victims, and when there are societal ills, we should work in unison to resolve them as quickly as possible. And we've had a country where we've had big societal ills, including slavery. So I'm not saying that that African Americans weren't oppressed horribly and abused horribly in our past. That's just one example of people that really were true victims. And there are victims today. But it's become a culture, and that last story by Rich kind of talks about it. So let's just set up, kind of how we got to this place in our culture, Richie. So in ancient times, a lot, and even current days, a lot of cultures were based on an honor culture. And you see this still in Hindu, some of the Hindu sects and some of the Islamist sects where there's honor killings, if their daughter goes out with the wrong person.
So not an honor system.
No, it's an honor culture, meaning that retribution is often violent because you're offending someone's honor, right? But largely the Western cultures and even China and the Far East cultures, Korea, Japan, what have you, a lot of the more modern cultures have evolved to more of a dignity-based culture. And so that, one of the great experiments that the U.S. had was that each person was entitled to individual liberty and individual dignity. And so largely now in Western cultures, and certainly in the United States, if we want to hone in on that, people who put honor above dignity or honor above the law are actually outcasts. That's what used to be the norm in ancient cultures and certainly in some other cultures around the world. But now they're almost looked down upon as they're taking the law into their own hands, and a dignified society would let the law handle those types of things. So before we go any further, what do you think about that background and how society and how we've advanced, and do you agree with that we went from an honor-based culture to a dignity-based culture?
I have no idea, but
can you say that over again?
I really have no idea what you're talking about. But what I will say is this. It's amazing how there is such a 180-degree difference with some cultures around the world in the same exact year or era, where one culture, you stone a person to death, you get thrown in jail. In another culture, that may be the way you resolve a situation. I don't know what's right or wrong, but I try to.
I think we do.
What I'm saying is, you always get on me when I start to use the word common sense.
Oh my goodness.
So when
yes,
it comes
I do get on you.
When it does come to what's right or wrong, I apply common sense. But for a culture that's not raised that way, they may vehemently disagree with me. So although I know what's right and wrong, and you don't stone a person to death for stealing a car, for instance.
By the way, did you see the Sultan of Brunei actually instituted a new rule where you can stone a homosexual to death in Brunei?
That's my point. Common sense to me that certain offenses don't constitute any harsh retribution or violence or even putting them in prison. It's like, maybe a slap on the wrist or a lecture or a fine. But how in today's world do we have such dynamically opposed ways to deal with things? And that's going to lead into some people viewpoint on who's really a victim or not.
Right. And by the way, it wasn't that long ago, a couple hundred years in this country, that men, even the aristocracy, the political class, Aaron Burr, solved a problem with a duel. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, there was people shot in the House of Representatives in Congress. So,
Wait, so you are admitting we can apply common sense to this category today?
Well, no, I believe, common sense obviously is there's no such thing in my mind, but we can talk about
That's
that on
your mind, very limited
show.
mind.
But I do believe that societies do evolve over time. Things have gotten, people have worked less because of technological innovation has enabled us to have more leisure time. Certainly, norms have evolved. We've become more progressive. Violence has decreased. So it's this slow-moving evolution of society and cultures that gradually move towards the positive. That's what I believe. So maybe not. All right, so let's transition into kind of where we are in the last, I'll say, 30 or 40 years, and really has ramped up in the last 8 to 10 years, where now I mentioned earlier, we have this oppression Olympics, right? So everyone...
The OO?
Right. Everyone who's not, and this is where I'm going to get in trouble, but everyone who's not a male, is a protected class. So if you're a male, then by default, you're privileged. If you're a white male, you're ultra privileged, and you're part of the patriarchy that has a system of oppression for everyone else. Asians, quite frankly, Asians fall into this privileged class. Jews, unfortunately, fall into this privileged class. So those are deemed in today's world as the privileged and not a protected class. If you're a woman, if you're a woman of minority, if you're a homosexual, if you are of any other ethnicity,
transgender,
there's a whole host of people. Lower income. You're starting to see it. If you're not as much with that. I'm surprised. Overweight, they're protected class. I haven't seen the short people been protected. They don't have a very good lobby, I guess.
If you're bald,
they've actually been privileged, I think. So no, but so even nowadays, you're starting to see these presidential candidates really bang the drum as far as income inequality. So the protected class now is going to be the underclass from a socioeconomic perspective. They've been abused by the greedy capitalists. And so, it's this oppression Olympics of who can be the most victimized. So what are your observations on that, Richie? Am I summarizing where we are today accurately?
Well, even if I say no, you're not going to agree with me. But
That's true.
I would think that you're on the right track.
Where am I going wrong?
I mean, whose category definitions are you acknowledging as far as privileged versus protected?
Well, based on what's going on in the mainstream press.
I don't know that Jewish people are not protected or victimless.
But do they seem to be called out by the progressive movement or the leftists as ones that need to be protected? I don't think so. I don't see that. And maybe I'm blind to it. But obviously, Jews were horribly oppressed in this country 100 years ago, as were many other ethnic groups. But I don't see that today at the same level as all those other groups that I mentioned.
Okay, so you're going by the left-wing
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they're not...
definition.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Yeah, and this is being driven. Make no mistake. This is being driven by the left in this country, this group identity, victim identity. But they're not alone. President Trump, I'm no big fan of his, he largely got elected by convincing a lot of the white working class manufacturing base in the Midwest, Pennsylvania included, our state, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, what have you, that they were victims. That they were victims of greedy Chinese trade practices, of Mexican immigrants, of European trade quotas. He convinced them that it wasn't their fault that their manufacturing jobs flowed where capital was more efficient. And they voted for him. And he largely used that cruelly, in my mind, to get elected. And it worked.
Well, you always find a way to go off on a political or libertarian tangent, so that you tie that one in better than a lot of your other tangents. I will say this. What's become egregious, and we covered this in helicopter parenting and some of the other episodes, are the now protected, quote-unquote, victims across many categories of mediocrity, meaning when you and I grew up, there was a pretty distinct delineation between you're dumb, smart, or very smart. You're a terrible athlete, an average athlete, or a great athlete. You have no clue about music, or you're a musician. You have no talent for art, or you do, and nobody complained. It's like, yeah, I suck at art, or I suck at playing the guitar, or I'm terrible basketball, or I'm just not that smart. I'm in track 4 with the rest of the dumb kids.
You told me you'd never bring that up again on the podcast.
I had to bring it up. And it just was accepted. We're all good at different things. Maybe somebody that's not so smart at this or so talented at this.
Find your lane.
Find your lane. Is very good at something else. And that was okay. Kids were okay with it. Parents were okay with it. Teachers were okay with it. Congressmen, police. It was
accepted.
It was accepted. Now, oh, no. If my kid doesn't play on that soccer team, or my kid doesn't get an A, or my kid's not allowed to sing the national anthem at the school, whatever, then he's a victim, and he's not. And I want to make sure he's protected against mental fragility in dealing with that horrid oppression.
Of course, yeah, and it's rampant and prevalent everywhere. And as I mentioned, I'm not done with the Democrats and the progressives on this, because I called out Trump just because it was the flow of the conversation. But it's even at the point now where these victims, I mentioned it earlier, are morally superior. They're deemed morally superior, and in some cases, and again, these are the fringe. I'm not saying this is the norm, but there's some cases that actually justify violence because, they have to correct this social injustice, and violence is justified. There's a group called Antifa that is a rebel, violent leftist group that believes in shutting down speech by blocking people from attending speech, by beating up people of a different thought. And this goes back to what you said many, many shows ago about this, pending civil war. And I don't know if it could even be a civil war, because there seems like there's so many groups. So who would fight who? There's all these groups competing with other groups of who could be more oppressed.
You want me to comment on that?
Of course, yeah. That's what the show is.
Well, I was just thinking, I was starting to feel bad because I am a little bit protected. I went to the hair salon the other day, and they moved me right to the front of the line, although people have been waiting for a while. I guess because it doesn't take long to cut my hair.
This guy will be in and out in 30 seconds.
So, yeah. Hey,
I know you said that Civil War kind of tongue in cheek, but it is a little scary that we're drawing lines and drawing barriers between us because we're in this group.
The world's changing. There has traditionally been obvious victims. Somebody got murdered. Somebody got raped. Somebody's mentally abused,
right,
or neglected by their broken family, or fired unjustly for a job and they go bankrupt or lose their house. But the line is now blurred with, oh, you don't like the color of my shoes, or like, I don't like your T-shirt today, Mazda Raceway. I think it's a dumb T-shirt, and I didn't mean to offend you right there.
I'm a victim.
You're now a victim. It's just, it's so annoying.
And that's the other thing I was going to bring up is the political class tends to campaign by outlier. Just like you mentioned, there are true victims, right? There are awful people on the right or the left, right? I mentioned some on the left. There's also KKK people on the right, right? Or racist or not neo-Nazis or what have you. There are people that are awful, but you can't brand that whole group with these rare exceptions. Yet that's what they do. And by the way, Trump does that. When he says there's criminals coming in from Mexico or whatever. Yeah, there's criminals on the Mayflower. I said that a couple weeks ago. The left does this very well, and they've been able to traditionally own these minority groups by convincing them they are victims. Any thoughts on that from the progressive left of whether that's accurate or not?
Well, from my observation, I'm by no means an expert. It seems like more of this is generated and propagated by the left.
Right.
There are obviously both sides to this, and nothing's ever 100%. But it does seem to be coming more in a way to take advantage of or use to their benefit to create these new victim categories. And we covered a lot about it regarding universities and colleges. The former left-wing promote free speech press is now, or free speech universities are now promoting limited, the exact opposite, limited speech.
Right.
You can't offend anybody that differs with your opinion.
Should be shut down.
Should be shut down. And you start telling enough people they're a victim, why not take advantage of it? Maybe I can get workman's comp or welfare or a free ride here or a free this here or free handouts there if I just also jump into that category.
Now, we never rehearsed or anything, but that was a brilliant segue into what I was talking about. And I still can't spell segue, by the way.
But you can spell brilliant.
I can. But that brings me up to kind of the cataclysmic. You like
wow.
that? The cataclysmic effect of people believing they're victims. I said this in the tease last week that almost the worst thing you can do to someone is convince them that they themselves are victims, because they'll be paralyzed into not moving forward because they'll want to blame someone else for even for what are rightfully some injustices or disadvantages that they grew up with, and use that as an excuse not to move forward in life. And in many cases, and this is one of the reasons I'm a libertarian, is I'd like the federal government not to matter so much. I'd like not to matter who got elected president or who got elected to Congress. I want government to be a very, very, very minute part of each of our lives, and I don't want to rely on government for anything. And a lot of people have been told, as government has expanded over the last 40 or 50, even 100 years, that government can solve your problems. And let's face it, it doesn't. Everything the government touches, or most things the government touches, they do poorly or inefficiently. And so if you're stuck out there claiming victimhood and waiting for someone to right these injustices and never moving forward in your own life, that's the way you'll live the rest of your life. I call it, actually, Adam Carolla, another podcast, uses the term language of losers. This is the language of losers. It's not my fault. The man's against me. there's a winner, there's a loser for every winner in this world. This is the language of losers.
Well, if Adam Carolla gets to coin a phrase, I'm going to coin the Eeyore syndrome.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Woe is me.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
going to rain soon. I'm
Yeah.
going to get hit by a car.
I can
Right?
never get ahead. It's the things are stacked against me. It's just the way things are. I'll never be able. I was born this way. I mean, there's all kinds of
Now, it's
excuses.
Again, it's easier for people to say sometimes that are in physically good shape, mentally good health, life's going well with finances and relationships. But I can, you have to, we all have had our troubles from time to time. And as we know, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% how you react to it.
Exactly right. And my point is that even if you would say that Mark Weaver has had a fairly blessed life, right? I also lost a child. Many people would take that. Many people consider that the worst thing that can happen to someone in life, right? But if I let that define me and my wife, then I could have been paralyzed 30 years ago and never moving forward. Now, that's just one example. There's been a lot of blessings in my life as well. But the point is that almost anyone can find an excuse not to move forward. And you have to continue to push forward despite the setbacks. And I think the language of losers that I like so much is unfortunately why a lot of people never really kind of thrive. And because they've been sold this victimhood culture.
What did Henry Ford say? If you can, you're right, and if you can't, you're right, or something to the effect of,
right. Yeah.
Either way,
if you
you're
think
right.
you can or you think you can't, either way, you're right.
Either way, you're right. So I'm a big believer in wiping yourself off, dusting yourself off when you get knocked down and getting back up again. I mean, I've really tried to live that way and teach.
Yeah, and you've had some setbacks in your life,
I've had
too.
plenty of setbacks, and if anything, it motivates me to come back stronger or try harder. And I try to teach my daughter that, my stepkids that, where, hey, if you strike out 4 times in one game, don't quit. Get intense to come back and improve upon that next game. I think that's a huge attribute. I also think it can be learned. It's not necessarily inherent in your DNA.
Right.
You can learn to toughen up, be motivated by setbacks. And I'm throwing out a lot of cliches again today, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Right. I truly believe in that. And positive vibes, positive karma are really important. My wife Jill's going through a once-a-month workshop with my beloved sister Sadiqa, who does a lot of mental help, meditation, breathing, kind of rid yourself of traumatic past events and seeing the good in everything, glasses half full.
Right.
And it's really, really helpful stuff. I can see a positive effects in my wife, and my sister's helped hundreds and hundreds of people. So it proves it. And a lot of these people came in with the Eeyore syndrome.
Right.
And they leave refreshed and ready to tackle the world.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, life's hard. Life is hard in many ways, and it's certainly harder for a lot of people, harder than I have it for sure. I have it very well, but very, very good. Is that right? The right English? Very
Both
good.
Both are incorrect.
Okay. But I guess the point is that you have to have the mindset of not looking for others to provide for you. Yes, you're going to have setbacks. Yes, you're going to have you're going to be victimized once in a while. Yes, you're not going to be born with every advantage of everyone else. Yes, you're going to have injustice. Yes, you're going to be treated poorly. There's an infinite list of ways that you could be aggrieved. You have to move forward with that and take responsibility, personal responsibility, to do better and to fight through it and not become a victim. It's cancer. Don't allow it.
Wow. Is that a dilly-dilly?
That's kind of my dilly-dilly. We got to move on. So any final comments as you summarize?
Final comments are, I've known some people that just through positive behavior and life is good succeed even when they're dealing with mental, physical, financial, personal obstacles.
Right.
And they're inspiring. And I've also known another group of people, several different people, where they almost play into the victim because that's their identity.
Yeah.
And they want the empathy
their
or the
shtick.
sympathy, or they want people constantly putting their arms around them and telling them they're a good guy. It's like a drug. They feed off it.
Right.
What's the hypochondria?
Munchausen by proxy.
Well, I know some people that, they're not happy unless they have an ailment,
Yeah.
or
Hypochondriac? I mean,
yeah, I guess a hypochondriac, where their identity is people feeling sorry for them because my knees are bad, I have headaches, I have rickets, my teeth are yellow, I lost all my hair, I have no
Right.
feet. And some of it's true.
you like rickets, by the way. You've been using that reference for a good 35 years. And I've known you.
Rickets, scurvy, and Bora Bora are my top 3 disease name dropping. But yeah, I can see how you can play into either. You can play into always being depressed and suppressed or messed up, or you can play into being positive and trying to be a winner and picking yourself up every time you're knocked down.
And that doesn't mean you'll always come out well. You may actually go through a season where everything's going wrong, but you have to fight through it. So that's my dilly. All right, Richie. So we'll move on to our closing segment in our remaining minutes. And just to set this up, we did this about a month ago, and we got a good laugh out of it. Certainly I did. No, you did too. But this is, imagine us doing Idiots of the Week, totally polluted. Yeah, I love that word. Totally polluted. And so I'll take you back to our What Is Time show a couple episodes ago. And the Idiots of the Week nominees were a mother who ran over her drunk son in the driveway. And the second one was the girl, we referenced it earlier, the girl that licked a toilet seat in an airplane and took a picture of it and posted it on Twitter. So we're going to pick up the conversation where we're finalizing those submissions, and Rich and I are talking about who would win in commentary. So here we go. Enjoy, listen, and laugh.
Read the caption. In good God's name, just to prove it, there she is in all her glory. I'm showing Rich a picture of. I'm horrified. He can describe it, but she actually posted the picture. You have a bit of an odd-looking girl with wide eyes and a bad haircut, with a bad nose earring. And she is literally licking full tongue. The full length of her tongue across a toilet in a bathroom of an airplane.
Oh, this is hysterical.
And don't know what happens in bathrooms and airplanes. Any bathroom. Oh my goodness! I mean, every week, Rich, how do you find this? So anyhow,
This is more than polluted sounding.
I told you they were good this week, but these are good. And let's hear
One more minute.
the commentary. Well, you know what? If your son is really, really annoying and drunk all the time, okay.
This is hysterical.
In a fit of rage, maybe you run him over. And your family obviously has issues. Yeah,
you have issues.
Over his head, maybe just his legs.
30 more seconds. I got to listen.
I can see how that happens in a really drunken, messy, broken family. When you... Hey, listen, if you're going to lick a toilet seat and do this as a hobby or on a regular basis, keep it to yourself.
That's good advice.
It's just as good a month later.
It's just as good slow or at regular speed.
And then post it. Something is really, really wrong.
You might start a trend a national trend with people to start to listen
Oh my goodness.
to videotape or audio tapes at half speed because it does add an insanely funny element.
The question is, should we convert our show to that every week?
We probably
Maybe we get more listeners.
We get more listeners.
What do you think about that, Rich? Half speed on iTunes, by the way, folks. If you want to be highly entertained, listen to our show, at least the Idiots of the Week, half speed on iTunes, or any show. But it's probably funny no matter who you listen
But
to.
I'll tell you, that's more than polluted. I mean, we'd both have to suck down a bottle of vodka. We'd have to do a bottle each of Xanax, and then hit ourselves in the head with a 10-pound plate to sound like that. That's unbelievable.
All right, so I know I'm pushing my will on the audience, but I am highly entertained by that. I'll have to put that on the back burner for a couple of months. But that is funny. I'm sorry, that's comedy.
That's real comedy.
And I am a judge of comedy, aren't I?
You sure are.
All right, folks, make sure you listen to our next show when we talk about the seemingly changing definition of success. Now, people can certainly define success in many different ways at an individual level, and we'll talk about the importance of what success is at an individual level. But what seems clear is that the younger generations, and you know Rich loves those millennials and iGen folks.
Milligen. I'm going to start Milligen when you combine them.
Yeah, they could combine it. Gen Z, I guess, is another one in that mix. But anyhow, they seem to have as a group, they seem to have a very different value system than older generations about what is success. So we're going to talk about all of that in our 50th show.
Wow.
Is that gold? Is 50 gold? Yes. 25 is silver. 50 is gold, right? Is that
in what?
Well, in wedding anniversaries, but we'll call it the gold show, the 50th.
Could be platinum.
I don't know. I have to look that up. We should probably know that.
That would help.
But anyhow, folks, as always, please remember, if what you see or hear sounds idiotic, then we're just the guys to help you sort it out. See y'all next episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Please download, subscribe, share, and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and also our website.
True love won't say goodbye. True love.